in, but he had to leave.
Next episode, I'm wearing my VR headset for the whole episode.
You should.
It's right there.
You should be like turned slightly the wrong direction too.
Yeah.
What you're not mentioning is it will have nothing to do with actually like showing it off or presenting it. You're just going to do it so that you can ignore us.
I'm just wearing it. Oh, I'm on a podcast. I was just playing a game.
I can't believe you skipped Space Monkey for that,
dude.
You missed out on some good
whole day of Space Monkey.
I didn't play earlier today because I was running like a ton of errands. So
still,
yeah.
Over now. We got it twice in 1 week, man.
Random last second thought. Do we want to talk at all about the LG lawsuit settlement thing? I mean, I'm not really big on talking about it, but you know,
I mean, I think just considering that what happened with the site and everything, and that it's like much more limited than we were originally aware of. Then
I do not get $400. That's the main point here.
Only the people that joined the original lawsuit because it was never certified as a class.
Boo.
Okay, are we ready to get underway?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Discord open?
Oh wait. So Ryan's going last. I'm going to second to last.
Okay, I'll go first of the new guys.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, new guys in quotes because we've actually been here almost 2 years now.
Yeah, right.
I'm the new guy now.
Okay. Moment of silence so that David can easily find the correct audio portion when he clips this out. Welcome to the Android Police Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Whitwam.
I'm Cody Toombs.
I'm Jordan Palmer.
I'm Corbin Davenport.
And I'm Ryan Hager.
And as you may have noticed, David is not with us this week, so we will attempt to soldier on in his absence.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So we're going to talk about a couple of things this week. First up is Wine for Android. There's like a real release of it now.
Yeah. So if you followed the site about a year and a half ago, Code Weavers, which is a company that makes Crossover, which is a popular program for running Windows programs on Mac and Linux, they came out with the first alpha release of Crossover for Android. So you could run Windows programs on Android devices with x86 chips. And that was big, especially for Chromebooks, because this was around the time Google was working on the Play Store support for Chrome OS. So this was really the first time you could run Windows programs on a Chromebook without, installing Linux and then Wine on top of that. But Crossover is built on open source software called Wine, which is also available for Mac and Linux and things. It's not as polished, but it's free and open source and all that good stuff. And Code Weavers is pretty cool because they contribute most of their changes back to the Wine code base. So it was probably only going to be a matter of time until you could run Wine, the open source version, on Android and such. And that finally happened with the release of Wine 3.0.
So it doesn't work on most phones though, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird because unlike Crossover for Android, which just flat out only works on Intel chips or x86 chips, Wine for Android does technically itself work on both x86 and ARM chips, but most Windows programs only work on x86. The only stuff that runs on ARM is the stuff that was built for those ARM Surface tablets a couple of years ago. So it's not a whole lot.
I see. So I can't run Photoshop on Android.
Right. Not unless you got one of those Zen phones or whatever that had the Intel chips in them. But as far as I know, they are trying to build an x86 emulator into this. So at some point that might be possible, but it will probably be very slow and not great.
So what's the deal like when you install this app? What is it? Does it like boot in? Does it just like let you emulate Windows, or Is
Well,
it
what-
like just it only runs like the programs that you like drop into it?
Well, right now, when you start it, and once it extracts itself and all that, it basically gives you a blank desktop with a start button, and you can add or remove programs from there. It's really buggy right now.
So how does that work like from Microsoft's end? Is it distributing Windows?
No, Wine is completely reverse engineered, so it doesn't have any Windows code in it whatsoever.
I see.
Yeah, it's kind of hacky. Especially Wine for Android is very buggy right now because it's very new. The only the only device I could get it working on was my OnePlus 5T. It crashed on everything else. I could not test it on my Chromebook because it is not on the Play Store yet. And if you want to install apps from outside the Play Store on Chromebooks, you have to put it into developer mode, and that's a whole mess. But yeah, it's even though it's very buggy and very much in the early stages, and you can't do 3D things yet because there's no graphics drivers yet, it's still very cool, and I like to see where this goes in the future.
I'm sure it'll work great in like 20 years.
Yeah, that's usually how it works with open source stuff.
So are you doing anything, we'll air quote the word productive with it? Like, have you been doing anything, I don't know, are there any apps or is there any software you're actually getting use out of right now?
I do have Photoshop installed on my Chromebook with Crossover. It's not perfect, but it doesn't, I mean, it works fine for what I need it to do. Yeah. And I have used Wine a lot over the years because I haven't, well, there's some times where I don't want to use Windows or I can't use Windows for something, but I'll still need like one or two programs, and Wine is good for that most of the time. But yeah, I just use Crossover on my Chromebook, and that's it because I have a desktop running Windows at the moment.
Okay. All right. So, long story short, you probably aren't going to want to install this yet.
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right. In other news, so Google finished that HTC sort of kind of acquisition where they basically just bought a bunch of people, which I didn't know you could do anymore. I thought that wasn't allowed. But yeah, so $1.1 billion that Google paid HTC to basically acquire a big chunk of their R&D design team. So that's done now. Do we have thoughts on this?
Well, one thing stood out to me. They had a comment. I don't know. I don't see the exact wording, but their Taiwan office is now a key innovation and engineering hub for Google. It just stood out to me that they wanted to be very specific about it being a Taiwan office.
Yeah, I don't think the employee or the former HTC employees are actually going anywhere. They're just sort of renaming the place they worked and called it a day.
Yeah, the signage is different. It's now they lost the green and went to rainbow.
Yes. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, this won't really have any changes in the near future because this is the same people that Google's been working with to make the Pixels for a while now. But
they didn't do the last two, so who knows how far in the pipeline
they did the small devices. They did the small Pixel 2. They didn't do the XL.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, I would be interested to see if they get HTC to make both of the second gen, because the U11 Plus, I think it was, kind of showed that HTC can make a bezel-less phone, or
I say mean the third gen, I assume.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, so I think that at this point it would be a little late for Google to change what they're planning to do with the third gen Pixels. But it's possible they had already, they knew this deal was going to happen a few, months ago. I think, what did they announce this in like
last year, right? Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty. That would still be late, like in the cycle to like change things about what they're going to do with the phone they released.
But didn't they scrap design? Didn't they scrap Timon or whatever that one was? Pretty early or pretty late on.
They were getting HTC to make the second gen Pixel XL, which was Timon. Then they canceled that for some unknown reason. People kind of assumed it was because HTC couldn't build it to the specs that Google wanted. And so Google went with LG, and that's how we got the Pixel 2 XL. And then what HTC sort of repurposed Timon to be the HTC U11 Plus, which actually looks really nice. So I'm not really sure what their issue was.
Yeah, I don't know. It might have been what kind of screen does the U11 Plus have? Is it an LCD?
I think it is LCD.
So they probably wanted the AMOLED or the OLED.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
So I kind of feel like this is not good for HTC. I'm not really sure how this helps them as a company because I mean they've been bleeding money for years. They get $1.1 billion, which I'm sure is nice, but this doesn't change the trajectory of the company. And now they have fewer staff, like fewer R&D people to like make better phones. And I mean, I guess they pay less money to their engineering staff now, but you need an engineering staff to turn around what HTC's been doing lately.
Well, and not only that, but you just had Google literally cherry pick engineers out of their company. I mean, they probably got a few that HTC was less concerned with, but I think they probably got mostly people that HTC is going to regret losing.
Yeah, I mean, and Google also got a patent licensing deal out of this. I feel like this is a really good deal for Google, and HTC is going to not be so happy about this in a few years.
Yeah, they'll blow through that 1.1 billion pretty quickly if they're not careful.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. This is almost like a slightly changed version of what they did with Motorola, because with Motorola they also cherry picked their favorite parts and then just sold off the rest of the company.
Yeah, well, they took like a whole segment of the company. Like they owned a thing called Motorola and made Motorola phones. This time they didn't even. I mean, they basically Google basically saved Motorola, and it feels like in this case they're just sort of like picking over the bones of HTC before it's dead.
Yeah, and in Motorola's case, to be fair, like they already knew what they were doing. Motorola was like intentionally getting rid of a part of their company. It wasn't, it was kind of planned, or at least that's all the rumors seem to suggest.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, how long do you think until HTC is acquired by somebody, like for real?
I don't think anyone's going to be interested in picking up what's left of HTC after this. They just sold their best hardware division, right?
And didn't they spin off Vive? Yeah, and they spun off Vive, right?
Did that actually happen?
I think it's still like a subsidiary of some manner.
Right. So yeah, who would want HTC?
I mean, I don't really know that VR is going to continue being like a big thing. I don't know that it's as valuable now as it was like a year ago when the hype was really high.
And there's a lot more competition too. For a while, the Vive was the only one with the motion controllers, and now Oculus is doing that, and Microsoft's doing that with their mixed reality stuff. So,
yeah, and I could easily see some sort of value in the company, but as a phone maker with fewer and fewer entries into the U.S. market, with obviously like one of their biggest sources of income was Google, and that's now probably gone, possibly gone. Like too many things are starting to fall away, so they're going to need some kind of business model to follow through with now.
Or they're going to get picked up by some venture capital firm and pulled apart.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably the most likely outcomes. Like somebody is going to buy HTC for not a lot of money, and their goal will basically be to slowly sell it off until it's not a thing anymore. Until there's some Chinese company that owns the name HTC and makes like white label phones with the name HTC on them.
HMD Global's good at doing that.
Yes, they are. Maybe HMD is going to start making HTC phones in a few years. I don't know.
HMD is bringing everyone back.
All right, so we wanted to talk briefly about moto mods. There was a leak earlier this week, or a rumor. Who knows? Supposedly people on Reddit got confirmation this was real. I don't know that I believe any of it still, but somebody said that they saw some weird moto mods.
So yeah, there was the guy listed about a handful of things. Just to run down the list really quickly. There is a projector with quote unquote 35% more brightness and larger built-in battery. Let's see,
Low cost speaker.
Unnamed LCS, which is a low cost speaker. Let's see, a drone, like a micro drone that attaches to the phone, and you can basically kind of toss it out of your hand.
Yeah, no, that's where I was like, no, this isn't real. I don't believe it.
Well, there's already something like that some Kickstarter was running.
Yeah, but the idea that Motorola would try to make a mod that does that and think like this is a good idea, we'll be able to sell this for a reasonable amount of money and people will buy it, is just kind of crazy to me.
Wait a second. When did anyone say reasonable amount of money for a moto mod? I'm pretty sure that's never happened.
I think even Motorola knows, like, if you're gonna charge like more than the cost of the phone for a mod, nobody's gonna buy it. People won't even buy a $300 mod. But
yeah.
Speaking of,
oh,
there's one more mod.
Yes, then that's the one I was saving for last. A camera mod that will supposedly support interchangeable lenses from Sony, Canon, and Nikon, the three biggest camera companies in the world.
So you can plug your $1,000 camera lens into your phone.
That's the implication. And he doesn't give anything in the way of details. And lower in the comments, he basically says that he didn't actually see this thing. It was just a picture of it that they showed in a slide, and I think kind of maybe implied some things. It wasn't really clear. But yeah, so the whole idea obviously is if you own a really nice camera, you could take those lenses with you, leave the camera body at home, and you're now good to go with just those lenses.
I mean, and that's, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot more to it than having a good lens.
Oh, there absolutely is.
And the mod has a garbage sensor. That's not really going to matter.
Yeah, and he said, I swear he said that the mod had a 1-inch sensor. I might be mixing that up with something else I read. But yeah, the concept of it sounds really neat. And I'll say this, as an enthusiast in photography, I really want this to be real. I super, super want this to be real. But at the same time, I also know how protective each of these companies is with their lens systems. Sony has only licensed their system to I'm sure of two companies, I think 3. One of them being Zeiss, the other one is Samyang / Rokinon. Nikon, I don't believe they've ever licensed their system to anyone. I could be wrong on that. And Canon has been really protective too. They little bit, I think somewhere between those two. Like, that just sounds really, really unlikely that Motorola, of all companies, got to them and said, hey, all 3 of you, get in a room with us. We'll make this thing happen. Like, they would have said no, I think.
Yeah.
And this would still be exciting even if it was just one of these companies.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because I think we were talking about this a couple months ago, but a couple of years ago, Samsung came out with that Galaxy Cam. That was a camera. It didn't have, I don't think it had detachable lenses, but it was it was a full camera running Android. And I always make fun of like these weird places where companies stick Android where it doesn't make sense, like appliances or that kind of thing. But that's one area I really think Android is great at, because there's so many photo services that support Android. Like, I could take pictures on my actual main camera and they'd instantly go up to Dropbox or Google Photos.
Yes, that's exactly what I want my camera to do. Like, I wish that the Galaxy camera was still a thing that was actually like a good camera and a good product, because what I do when I take photos on my real camera is I sync them to my desktop and they go into Dropbox and then they upload to Dropbox. So I can have them on my other devices. Like, it would be great if they would just go to Dropbox as I'm taking them automatically, like I do on my phone.
And you'd be able to use the Android version of Lightroom or Photoshop to do editing on device. limited, but
yes, that would be nice as well. Yeah, but so I don't know if I believe that the camera mod thing is going to be real. I think the speaker is probably, yeah, sure. I could see them making a new like cheap speaker. The new projector sounds like exactly like the sort of stupid thing Motorola would do, because the last one was terrible, and I don't know why they would even bother. I think they were giving those first gen projectors away for free when you bought a Z2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They probably
I
have
remember AT&T was giving them away for $10, I think. No, that was the giant battery mod.
That Motomod ecosystem's not going great.
Yeah. And that almost seems like the other thing to question here, because Moto mods have done, at least as I understand it, pretty horribly.
Yeah, I don't know what how much longer it's going to take for Motorola to decide that this isn't a winning strategy. I mean, I guess they've never really talked about how much they're making on Moto mods. Maybe the margins are like ridiculously high and they don't need to sell a lot of them, but I doubt that.
Yeah, and it's also the other flip side is that not only is this bad for Motorola, but it's bad for their sort of competition, because they keep boxing themselves into a corner because they can't change the design on their phones or they'll break Motomod compatibility.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So they committed to having a phone that has a certain footprint and a completely flat back. We were talking about that situation just, I don't know, a week or two ago, or I guess at least 2 weeks ago. I don't remember which show it was, when those supposed Motorola phone renders leaked, and the new Moto Z phone, it's got, like there's no obvious spot for fingerprint sensor, because obviously you can't have one on the back because of mods, and there wasn't one on the front. So it's like it's either got one in the display or it doesn't have one at all. The latter of which seems terrible to me. But yeah, I mean, Motorola has sort of stuck themselves in this spot of supporting Moto mods, and if they're not selling, then that's a real bummer for Motorola.
It's kind of like how we predicted early on, though. We said these weren't going to do well.
Oh yeah, I think pretty much everybody was like skeptical of this. But I mean, I've been wrong about things before, once or twice, occasionally. But I think in this case, we're pretty right. I don't think Moto mods are working out, and the stuff that is leaked does not. I mean,
none of those sound like a killer app.
Yeah, as much as I would love to have a drone on the back of my phone, I don't believe that it is either real or will be any good.
Yeah. I will say this. I think if the camera mod is real and can be done at a price that is not absurd, and if the quality of the experience isn't miserable, which I have a feeling like if you're stuck using, let's say, Motorola's camera app for any reason, it will be miserable. Yeah. But if they can get all these things right, I can see so many photographers being like, you know what? It's not going to be my main camera, but I will happily have this as like a second camera. Like if you could just bring this along and be like, this is the one I'm going to shoot with. And then I'm going to record the action with this over here. I'll just set up this other phone, attach the mod. This is my other extra lens. I'll throw it on there. Like that actually gets pretty compelling if it's not terrible.
I mean, the history of Motorola cameras does not make me super confident. Like that Hasselblad camera mod was absolute garbage.
It was actually worse than the camera on the phone itself.
It was worse than just your regular phone camera, unless you were in outside with very good light and just needed to take a picture of something very far away.
I remember your rage when you got that.
Yeah, I was upset. I would have been a lot more upset if I paid $300 for that junk. So look, Motorola would have to get a lot of things right that they don't usually get right for this to make any sense. And in general, Moto mods are looking like not a good bet. Okay, so we've complained about Motorola. We want to talk briefly about the 5G kerfluffle from this week.
So, short version, there was a rumor that came out of the White House claiming that some people were proposing that for security reasons, specifically for security reasons, that the U.S. government should build its own 5G wireless network and basically lease it out to carriers. And which this model isn't all that different from something that's done in parts of Europe. So, I mean, it's not the craziest idea in the world. But at the same time, in our country, the way things work here, yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
No.
this so and of course, like after this got out and everybody was like, well, this seems pretty difficult to implement. The White House released a statement saying no, that we don't actually want to do this. Somebody wrote this a while back as a proposal, and it's not actually something we're doing, which doesn't surprise me because the carriers already have licenses for spectrum that they plan to use for 5G that they are, in the process of implementing. It would have been quite a change in direction to say, no, we're going to build the 5G network and you guys just lease it from us. So, yeah, it's not happening.
And given the way that things work with business interests in this country, the fact it was really, really obvious. Any carrier that has a really good, let's say, monopoly on spectrum, they weren't going to let that go. And they were going to put as much money into making sure every politician was going to vote their way. So, this was bound to not happen.
I liked the fixation on China that was mentioned in the proposal as well, that this was some sort of defensive move. The establishment of a national 5G network would help the U.S. in its fight against the Chinese radio manufacturers.
Yeah. Like Huawei trying to get in all of our homes with their spy phones.
They're stealing all of our 5Gs.
I think OnePlus already has that down, but
now they took all of our Gs. Okay, but so I mean, in I think somewhat related 5G news, Sprint just today, the CEO said that they're looking to start deploying their 5G network in the first half of 2019, which would put them ahead of other carriers' rollout plans, at least the ones that we know about. T-Mobile is the only other carrier that's been pretty clear about what they want to do, and they're not going to start it until, the second half of 2019. So Sprint's like, we're going to be first, but they were first to 4G too, WiMAX, and that went so well.
Oh God, WiMAX. I was on Sprint at that time. That was.
Oh yeah, did you get that? You got the Evo. There was also that version of the Nexus S that had WiMAX.
Yeah, I had that one too, and then I returned it.
That was for a while. That was the only phone that you could use. At the time, it was known as Google Wallet, because that was back when carriers had to authorize phones to use NFC payments, which made no sense. That was a dark time. But yeah, so WiMAX didn't work out. They switched to LTE for 4G, obviously, and they've never really recovered from that incident. It hasn't been great for Sprint since then. They've gone from being a strong number 3 competitor in the market to trailing T-Mobile.
The only consolation is they're beating US Cellular, which isn't that
which is owned by T-Mobile now, right? T-Mobile owns that.
Do they?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I thought that they were their own.
They definitely don't.
I think they're independent, but I'll look it up.
I think T-Mobile was looking into.
I think there was a rumor.
Yeah, it was talked about, but I know it never happened.
Okay, well, at any rate, Sprint is still the smallest of the big national carriers. I don't think US Cellular is something that most
looks like
really
they just have a roaming agreement.
Okay, so I mean, is this going to do any favors for Sprint? If they're the first to offer 5G, are people going to flock back to Sprint?
Yeah, unless it improves reliability and they change their shady pricing strategies.
So they did say that the pricing would go up. They said the 5G service is going to be more expensive. They didn't say how much more expensive, but the CEO tried to spin that as an advantage because Sprint's pricing now is lower than other carriers. But it's lower in certain ways.
And for a certain amount of time.
If you take advantage of certain deals, yeah, it's cheaper. But a lot of the things that they do, yeah, it's only good for a year or two.
When it's on the 2.5 gigahertz band, it's not even going to penetrate that far.
That's the other thing is they
you got to be within a couple hundred feet of a tower.
Sprint has a ton of 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. They have it in every market in the US. And they've been using it on LTE, but I don't think that you want to base an entire network around that.
No.
And I don't know if they have enough low frequency spectrum to compensate for that. Like T-Mobile, I think, is planning to use a number of bands, including the 600 megahertz licenses that they just picked up.
And that was a smart acquisition. That's got some really good penetration.
Yeah. So I don't know. T-Mobile seems like they're in a pretty good spot to continue growing. And Sprint, I'm just I question how well things are going to go for them going forward.
Yeah, and technical reasons aside, how many people are really going to either switch to Sprint or upgrade to Sprint's 5G plan because they desperately need faster speeds? Like, I think
not
I guess
many.
that could be a problem.
The problem with, so when we move to 5G, I guarantee you that the first wave of devices will be bad.
That's remember the Droid Bionic?
Like that's, I don't know if it'll be, I hope it's not going to be quite as bad as, it was
HTC Thunderbolt
in the LTE era, because like Thunderbolt is like a famous example of like, of garbage.
I think I got 5 hours of battery on that thing at max.
Yeah, it was also like gigantic. Like if you look at that thing, it's like it had this tiny screen and then like this big like phone shaped thing all around it. It was bad.
The Bionic was cool, but its battery life was pretty bad too.
Hopefully we've reached the point where Qualcomm is planning ahead better, and there aren't going to be like phones with 2 separate power hungry modems in them. So hopefully. I guess we'll see how that goes, but I would wager that 5G is going to be, it's going to take time before you'll actually want to carry a phone with 5G, and being first on the market with 5G, I don't think is going to do anybody, any magical favors.
Unless it's the Evo 4G version 2 with the kickstand.
Sprint should probably bring that back. They should.
And at this point,
should do
at this point, half of the purpose of 5G, we don't even know what they're going to end up landing on. With LTE, we know exactly what sort of technologies and speeds everyone ended up settling on when it was fully implemented by everybody. We don't really know what 5G is going to be.
No.
Yeah. And of course, the big thing with 5G is that it's supposed to help out with networks that are heavily congested. And Sprint's network, I don't think, is very congested.
Well, as usual, it kind of depends on where you're at. Like,
where I am, Sprint is like laughable. Like nobody has Sprint here.
Yeah, Sprint is not good up where I live either, but neither is Verizon. Verizon's actually not very good around here.
AT&T is also laughably bad here too. So yeah, it just depends on where you are.
Yeah, maybe there's some place where Sprint is great and people are super excited to hear about this 5G thing.
Oh, goodness.
Good old Sprint.
Oh, all right. So Corbin is going to tell us about Strava, I think, and how they outed some military bases. I didn't read this, but apparently it's funny.
Yeah. So
why you read AP?
Yeah, so Strava is a fitness app, and its main attraction is that you can easily share where you've been with other people. So like you can run the same route as your friend or whatever. And the important thing to note is that it doesn't share your routes by default. You have to explicitly share it with friends and stuff. So what Strava did near the end of last year is they made a heat map on top of just a world map, and you could zoom in and see everywhere where people had run, and if people ran more in a certain area, then it got brighter. It was pretty cool to look at. And then some researchers, people on Twitter, found that there were traces around military bases and other things that are off limits to the general public, and some of them were actually revealing where they were. Like there was just lines in the middle of like deserts and war zones. That's pretty obvious, something military related. So the main concern wasn't so much that it was revealing where these bases were, but it was revealing like the outlines of them and where the main walking paths and such were within them. That was kind of a security risk. So it was kind of Strava's fault for not going through this and thinking, there's a bunch of lines in the middle of a war zone. Maybe we shouldn't publish those. And then it was also the fault of all the military officers that decided to leave the tracking on and share their routes when they were in areas they probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I'm surprised there aren't rules about using devices with GPS when you're like in a war zone.
Well, there's a pretty major, well, and where I live, I'm surrounded by 6 or 7 military installations, but one of them's way out in the middle of nowhere, and they confiscate your phone before you go in. So I'm surprised that this happened, because there are those rules, especially in the really high security installations. So,
and famously, one of the heat maps they had was from Area 51, which was just kind of hilarious.
Yeah, there was a guy riding his bike around the edge of Area 51. It might have been an alien.
Oh God!
Riding his hover bike around Area 51. Then
yes.
The thing is, so there was this. I know I heard about it with the Trump administration. I thought this was true with Obama's too. During certain meetings, they just required everyone to leave their phone outside the room. And the reasons that they always gave was kind of, hey, we're worried people are going to hack into your phones and start listening in. But let's be honest, like the real reason is, no, it's because people just don't know how to use their phones. People forget that they turn something on. People forget that they've got certain apps installed. People don't understand that certain things work certain ways. And hey, guess what? You leave this thing on and you just recorded a high security meeting, or you recorded the outline of your military base while you were taking a jog.
Or someone says, okay, Google, while they're talking about something confidential, and then a voice snippet of that goes to Google servers. Just little stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, and also this is just Strava, yes, just got to be the big news item over this, but that you can't tell me this is not going to become such a common trend over the next few years. So many services are going to pop up with, hey, we've got this really cool information about blah blah blah, and then someone's going to pop up and say, yeah, you know how much I can figure out thanks to that public information you're now sharing?
Yeah.
This is going to be normal.
Yep. So lesson to everyone, turn off your GPS when you're not in a place you shouldn't have it on.
If you're in the military and you're in a sensitive, secure area, maybe turn your phone off.
Yeah. Sage advice. Okay, so we wanted to talk about a pair of polls that we have done recently that apparently have rather interesting results. So the first of them, we asked people about what screen aspect ratios they wanted, and we do not agree with people.
The most popular answer was 16:9, which I was not expecting.
Everybody is wrong.
You're all cavemen now.
It did only beat out 18:9 by a tiny bit, but
it shouldn't have even been close. There shouldn't have even been a margin.
I think those are people that were like me, where they saw the first 18:9 phones. They were like, I mean, I guess that's cool, but I don't really see what the deal is. And then I actually got the OnePlus 5T. I was like, wow, there's so much room for activities.
Exactly. It's a big difference and a nice transition. I was a bit skeptical at first too, because I didn't want a taller phone.
Yeah. My only concern is differential aging, because if you're watching like a lot of video, you're going to have that constant letterbox effect, and the pixels in the middle will be aging, but the pixels on the edge will not. So you're going to end up with...
You'd have to watch a lot of video.
Yeah. Well, some people do. Some people really watch a couple hours a day. Yeah.
It depends how you're watching it too, because a lot of apps like YouTube, they let you, zoom to like sort of fill.
That's a good point.
So yeah, I mean, I think the whole advantage of having an 18:9 phone is that it really it fills the face of the device much more efficiently, and you get a larger screen without making the phone as wide. And the wideness of the phone is the main ergonomic determiner. Like if a phone is just slightly too wide, you're not it's not comfortable to use. You can still have a phone with a 6-inch screen, But if it's, you know, if it's a little bit narrower, then it's just more comfortable to use.
I think that depends a little bit on navigation. Like if you've got a ton of navigation stuff up at the top, which famously Apple screwed that one up with the iPhone for a while, then it's a little bit harder. And it at that point, it depends on the user. Like if you've got really long fingers, a wider phone is less of a problem.
Yeah, and I also think this answer also depends on, well, the poll itself was for smartphones, but for tablets, I'd probably rather have a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Oh yeah, For a tablet, yeah, the 4:3 aspect ratio makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't want an 18:9 tablet. That doesn't sound
No.
Ultra wide tablets,
right?
You know, if the Nexus 9 had just had a processor that didn't suck, that would have been such a winner.
Also, the build quality was bad.
Yeah. The build quality was terrible.
That was a big Nexus 5.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate.
But I gotta say, for me, like I've got a Pixel and a Pixel 2, or XLs of both, and I just kind of don't care. Like I'm good with both of them. I go back and forth all the time, and it's just not that big of a difference to me.
I mean, I don't hate phones that are 16:9. I mean, I still use them sometimes, but it's just way better. Okay, so hold on. I have an example for people that are watching the video, I guess. So like very few of you. So I have a Pixel 2 XL and a Razer phone, and they both have 6-inch screens, but like look how much wider the Razer phone is than the 2 XL. Like it's a substantial enough difference that like you don't want to, you know, it's just less comfortable to use. And I feel like people who are against an 18:9 aspect ratio, they just haven't used a phone with it yet.
Yeah. And in split screen mode, it gives you so much more space. Split screen on 16:9, it's like you can't really use either of the apps that you've got set up. But if
you just get a tiny window.
Yeah.
That I'll definitely agree with.
Because you can pull up a keyboard and be using two different apps. I was at the hairdresser's a month ago, and I was writing a post and researching a post for AP on my phone in split window with the 18:9 screen. It worked.
I imagine it was still pretty unpleasant.
It was painful, but I did it. It worked.
And the mobile WordPress is just terrible.
Okay, all right. And the second poll that we found unusual just recently is how much data people are using, how much data they burn through, and a lot of people apparently using a lot of data, and it has changed markedly since the last time we asked.
Yeah, the first result of 2 to 4 gigs is still the same as the last time that we posed the question, but I guess since the reintroduction, I should say, of AT&T and Verizon's unlimited plans, the in excess of 15 gigs options way up. People have apparently switched in mass to these new unlimited plans.
So yeah, it was 19% that said more than 15 gigs and just 20% that said 2 to 4.
It was very close, in fact.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I don't think I've ever used more than like 5 or 6 gigs in a month, but I, you know, am on Wi-Fi almost all the time. Maybe I would feel the necessity that of having unlimited data if I was out of the house all day.
I was going to say, I don't leave the house, so
yeah, we're not the best examples of how much data.
I used a ton of data at CES though.
Yeah, and that same for me. Like every time I go to a conference, I'll rack up like 6-7 gigs of usage. But
or if I go to the park for a day to work off my phone.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That'll do it.
One thing that does stand out to me is there's a very noticeable gap in the results. Like you're either over 15 gigs and probably, I'm gonna guess by probably quite a bit, or you're under. It looks like basically under 4. The lowest results are the basically 6 to 15 gig usage. Like that is your big gap. So people are either, I'm guessing I'm just picturing in my head, it's people who are watching Netflix on their phones like all the time, and then there's everyone else who's not.
Yeah, or there's the people with the prepaid phone plans that you only get a couple gigs, and then there's the people that pay for unlimited, so they just use it all the time instead of Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see what these results would look like if the data was also attached to like regional data, so we knew where people were using how much data. Because some of this might not even be in the U.S. It might not be a result of these new unlimited plans.
Yeah, most of our readership is U.S., but I'm
Yeah.
sure that the data is skewed somewhat by international readers. I don't know how common unlimited is in other countries. I'm under the impression that it is not as common.
Yeah.
Some of the people in comments here were actually talking about how I guess it's really common in India now. So I was interested in, that's what I was specifically interested in seeing, is how much of this might have been as a result of our Indian readership.
Yeah, from what I understand, Wi-Fi isn't really as much of a thing over there as it is here. Most people just use data all the time. That's their only internet connection. Because I mean, just in India in general, most people use their phones as their main or only computers.
I mean, I know people here that are like that too now.
Yeah.
They don't even have Wi-Fi at home. They just use LTE all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else we want to say about the polls other than we don't agree with people?
Our readers are wrong. It's fine.
Okay. No, it's fine. Okay. I think we probably have a couple minutes if Jordan would like to complain about a tablet that he's been forced to use lately.
Well, it's not that bad, but I've got the AT&T Moto Tab here.
It's a Motorola tablet. How about that?
Yeah, I haven't seen one of these for a while.
Is it better than the Zyboard?
Yes. So basically, the way to think of this is like AT&T's version of the Verizon Ellipsis. Basically, they took a white label tablet and rebranded it and stuck a bunch of bloatware on it. And it's really focused around the DirecTV users. So it's got like DirecTV Now, and you can watch your DirecTV service, kind of like Xfinity. But it's a pretty stockish skin with a probably 35, I think I counted, pre-installed apps.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And some of them are very large games that you can't uninstall.
So does AT&T pay you to take this tablet, or
Yeah. And but it's got this really interesting desktop interface. I don't know if it'd show up well on my camera here, but you can maybe see there in the corner, it moves the navigation buttons over into the left corner, and then it opens up this taskbar where it shows recent apps. So
that's weird.
They call it the productivity interface.
So it's just like multitasking shortcuts that are always available. Is that always visible? Like if you're in an app?
Yeah. So if I open my Xfinity app, it still shows up there in the bottom nav.
Weird.
So it's like we're going back to Honeycomb.
Basically, yeah. It feels very Honeycomb-ish.
Honeycomb was great.
It was actually not too bad.
If nothing else, for where the nav buttons were.
Yeah, I love the nav buttons in the corner.
Yeah,
it makes it so much easier.
When they started treating everything like a giant phone, ugh.
Yeah, I actually remember because my first tablet that I got myself was a Transformer pad, and it came with Honeycomb, and that was the best. And then I got an update to 4.0, and it was still pretty good. And then I switched to CyanogenMod, and like after every minor release, they took away more and more tablet features until it was just a big phone.
Yeah, I don't like on the tablets. I don't like the soft keys in the middle.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, that was a very strange decision. I think it's pretty universally disliked.
But other than
even Google agreed with that. On the Pixel C, the nav buttons are on the left, except the recents, which is on the right for.
Because you're holding it. Yeah. But I think the biggest hardware problem with this tablet is the touch latency is really bad. It takes it quite a while to respond to any sort of touch input. A very noticeable delay when scrolling. Fingerprint sensor is actually pretty accurate. It just takes probably 2 to 3 seconds for it to unlock and wake the tablet up. Battery life has been quite good. And the front-facing speakers are a nice touch. I like those. But
so how much is this?
what is it? $349?
Yikes.
Oof.
Is that like with a contract or anything, or?
I think so. $300. Yeah. It's 300. It's $300 is way too much for this.
Yeah, you can get it. You can get a Motorola Droid Zyboard for $99 on Amazon right now. So I don't know if anybody has not actually seen that tablet, you should look up pictures of it because it is magnificently ugly. It is an octagon. It's like a stretch. It's like a stretched out stop sign. It's fabulous.
I remember the Zyboard. But anyway, it was weird seeing a Moto tab, but it's actually when I looked at my all my devices in the device locator, it shows up as a Lenovo Tab 4 10 Plus. So
and I think some site reached out because everyone got excited about this when it was announced because like Motorola's going back to tablets, and then Motorola it was either Moto or Lenovo that said no, this is Lenovo making this is a Lenovo product, it just has the Moto brand name.
Yeah, my theory is that would sell better hypothetically here in the US with an AT&T branding. Like a Lenovo tablet probably wouldn't sell as well with AT&T.
Also, judging by the recent Huawei debacle, I think people would be slightly less excited to buy things branded from a Chinese company.
Right. So, I mean, and it feels really well built. It's got like this soft touch back. The best way I could describe it is if you took the Nexus 7 rubber, that Band-Aid rubber thing, and then mixed that with the OnePlus Sandstone. You get this really smooth but grippy material that doesn't get gross like the Nexus 7 did. But it doesn't feel like you're touching sandpaper like the OnePlus One. So, I mean, if it was $100, I'd say maybe get it. But for $300, no. Just watch DirecTV on your phone if you absolutely have to watch TV outside of your house.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously putting all the 4G radios in a tablet would make it cost more, but yeah, that's a lot of money for a tablet that isn't.
If you really want an Android tablet, just look at Asus tablets. They're better.
Yeah, I mean their tablets are pretty good for what you pay.
Yeah,
if you need a tablet right now.
If you need a tablet, just get an iPad.
Yeah. Or if you're gonna buy a tablet for like a kid or your parents or something, just get them.
Get the Fire.
Yeah,
the Kindle Fires are not that bad.
No, I mean, they're totally fine. Like you can get a fine tablet for $50. Like it's fine. Yeah. There's nothing wrong. It's fine.
Both my sisters have one. I put the Play Store on both of them. After that, I mean, it's good for what you get. It's a lot better than the other tablets you can get for that price. The screen is hot garbage, but I mean, you get what you pay for. So
I would not have expected a few years back when Amazon first started making Fire tablets that would just sort of be a good purchase. It never seemed like a particularly good one, but here we are.
Yep.
Good job, Google. All right. So I believe we are out of things to discuss unless anybody has anything else they want to chat about.
Oh, my review of the Fossil Q control should go up. I'm guessing tomorrow. I need to publish it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So it still runs Android Wear, right? It's an Android Wear watch.
Yes.
Yep.
Another dying category.
See, here's the weird thing about this watch is that I actually really like it. It looks a bit like the Moto 360s, except it doesn't have a flat tire. So there we go. So it's nice, but here's the weird part is that it is basically just a rebranded Misfit Vapor. But this costs $75 more. So unless you really, really want something from Fossil, no one should buy this.
It's the same maker, the same company.
Yeah.
Fossil Group that does. Yeah. Okay.
Fossil owns Misfit.
All right.
So it's weird.
All right, then. So we will wrap it up there. If anybody out there has questions, comments, concerns, you can direct those to podcast@androidpolice.com, and we will catch you next time.
Good night, everyone.
Have fun.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast.